Hello and welcome to Deconstructed. I am Lady Miriam, or well, that was what the Maven used to be Lady Miriam. I guess I still am, but anyway, now we go by the Maven. So we've got some weekly news headlines for you today. This is what Deconstructed is really all about learning how to have critical thinking skills, how to look at the news and dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so first what we do is we're going to go through headlines quickly, just briefly headlines, and then we'll get to the real story. Okay, the one story that we'll go a little bit deeper in and think more about. Okay, so here on the screen, let's ta-da. Okay, news headlines. So first up, we're going to go back to Monday, the 16th of April. What happened at the beginning of this week? Well, first, Kendrick Lamar won the Pulitzer Prize for music. Interesting. North and South Korea are starting to plan talks. So this actually, little bits have been coming out all week, but it pretty much kind of started on Monday that they announced that they're planning some talks. This is actually pretty historically significant that that North and South Korea, they've been at war since the 50s, you know, and so some progress being made. And if they it kind of diffuses the situation with the U.S. as well. The U.S. is almost just egging on some kind of conflict to start up and kind of throw some water on that fire. India's outrage over the gang rape and murder of an 8-year-old girl. So this also really kind of broke out into the news on Monday. It happened a few weeks before, and it's a situation. There was a Muslim girl, and there were Hindu police that were involved in the actual raping of the girl. And so this is something that has been building the protest. Hello, Swarab. And if you would like to join me with comments, then you need to watch live on Periscope and you can comment with me and interact. Alrighty, so that has been going on. Tuesday, the 17th, what happened? Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 suffered an engine damage. There's a picture of the damage. One person died. The window was blown out. Now there's more recent stories about people when the oxygen masks came down. People didn't know how to put them on correctly and things, but there was an emergency landing, and the pilot is, very heroic for that not turning into a major disaster. The United Kingdom's Windrush scandal has started heating up. Okay, so what happened is, you can see here there's a boat called the Windrush, and you've got the British Virgin Islands and the British this and that, different islands in the Caribbean. Well, at one point, people were brought to the UK, but the citizenship didn't really happen, and so now they're like trying to deport everybody if they don't actually have their citizenship, but they've lived in the UK all their life because their parents are the ones that came over and they were born in the UK. And so it's a big mess that the UK is trying to deal with, and it's really blown into a scandal. Wednesday, the 18th, what happened? Well, Barbara Bush died. She was the mother of George W. Bush, president, and also the wife of George Bush Sr., who was also president. Okay, and then also the UN team that was in Syria to investigate the chemical sites, weapons sites, and to see whether or not Syria was involved in the chemical weapons attack, the most recent one, which we'll kind of get to in our Deconstructed story. They were going out to do their investigations and they were fired upon. So someone really doesn't want them to complete their investigation. Thursday, the 19th. The Pentagon made an announcement and they said missile attacks are unlikely to stop chemical weapons attacks. Wow. Well, that should like have some bells ringing for you, as we'll get to in our Deconstructed. Really, who's doing the chemical weapons attacks? Is it Syria? You know, I would say this is probably one of the most truthful statements ever coming from the Pentagon, that the missile attacks aren't going to stop chemical weapons attacks. Yeah, that's probably very true. And you should maybe do your own research about why. All right, NASA launched TESS. And TESS is a satellite to go hunting for exoplanets in the universe. So meaning any other planets that can support life. And then over in Cuba, Raul Castro has passed the presidency on to Miguel Diaz-Canel. Let's say Spanish, maybe Canel. He is the first person outside of the Castro family to rule over Cuba in almost 60 years. So Raul decided, I'm tired. I'm gonna take a break. Here, you can run the country now. And then in India, another story coming out of India, a monkey attacked a woman at a railway platform. Well, that's bad enough being attacked by a monkey. Well, she tried to run away from the monkey and the attack. Hey, Steve, we're just talking about this monkey attack in India at a railway station. Well, she tried to run away from the monkey and got run over by a train. Yeah, not a pretty sight. So that's just a stock photo of the monkeys. Friday, the 20th of April. Unbelievable. I know. It's again, if you want to join with comments, then watch on Periscope so I can see your comments. Okay, so moving on to Friday. We're going through our headlines and then we'll get to our big deconstructed story. King Mswati III of Swaziland has proclaimed that he wants his nation to be henceforth known as Eswatini. And I guess he's been calling it that for a long time, and now he's proclaimed it. So we'll have to see if the UN and the maps, imagine anytime you have a new country or a country changes its name, you know, all the atlases and encyclopedias and textbooks and everything have to change. In Japan, the volcano in southern Japan erupted for the first time in 250 years. Now, there hasn't been any reports of any deaths, but they have like cordoned off the area around the volcano. And then a 2-day summit involving 46 heads of Commonwealth governments and foreign ministers from the remaining 7 countries have declared that Prince Charles will be the next head of the Commonwealth. So this is relating to the United Kingdom and the British Empire. There's 46 plus 7 countries, do the math, 13, 53. 53 countries that are members of the Commonwealth, so they kind of recognize Great Britain, but they're not. Swaziland thing is going to raise all our taxes. Yeah, of course, because we have to reprint all the documents. No. Anyway, the Queen, who's currently the head of the Commonwealth, it doesn't. Even though the monarchy has its rules of succession, the Commonwealths don't have to follow that. So that's why during this summit, they were going to choose who would be the next head of the Commonwealth. And they decided, yeah, they'll just follow the monarchy rules and it'll be Prince Charles. All right. Now, if you heard in the news, was a caravan going from Central America to the U.S.-Mexico border to try and get political asylum. So, various countries, you've got like Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, these countries in Central America. They're trying to escape their political persecution that they say is occurring, which it very well may be. I don't know much about what's going on in Central America, so I cannot make a statement about that. But anyway, they started, and a lot of them have just decided to settle in Mexico. But 50 of them have reached the U.S.-Mexico border. This just happened last night, so we're going to see what happens. And then in China, China flew their bombers around Taiwan holding live fire drills, which is increasing tensions in the South China Sea. And then it's being reported that the Islamic State, ISIL, Daesh, whatever you want to call it, that they've given up their last pocket in the Syrian capital. Now, Syria has said, we're either going to bomb the hell out of you, or we'll let you get on buses and go to the eastern side of the country where your friends are, but get out of the greater Damascus area. And so they've decided to leave. So that's it for ISIS. And we'll kind of get into Syria. Syria is going to be our top. Hello, thank you for joining in the super hearts. I mean, not super, just the green hearts. Our deconstructed story will be about Syria. Okay, and now this one, I checked this morning, and did anything happen? Because I prepared last night, and a kangaroo has died after visitors at a Chinese zoo hurled rocks to force her to jump. So this is like an area. This isn't a picture of them throwing rocks, but it shows the enclosure where the kangaroo lived, and you could see how easy it would be to throw rocks at it, and yeah, so that's like tragic. I mean, come on, you go to a zoo. Okay, because there's a lot of people in the world. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, okay? Because normally I just do headline, headline, headline. Let me talk about this just for a minute. There's a lot of people that are against zoos. Any zoo, no wild animal should ever be captured and put in a zoo. Okay, I'm not one of those people. I think a proper zoo, and hello Fairfax 4, thank you for joining. I think a properly maintained zoo, quite frankly, is like hitting the lottery for a wild animal. I mean, they get their food, they get medical treatment, they don't have to worry about predators. I mean, it's a pretty good deal if it's maintained well, okay, and the animals are well cared for. And then people that would otherwise never be able to see a real wild animal have the opportunity to see a wild animal, and it fosters love and appreciation and caring and empathy for the wild animals. So then when you hear about the rhino poachers or whatever, you care about it, right? I guess not at the zoo in China. How could the zoo even allow this to happen? I mean, because people have been known for throwing the rocks at the kangaroo and other animals. So, hire someone for some low minimum wage type salary to stand there on the fence, or even just put one of your you got plenty of military in China. Assign some military to stand there at the fence, and I bet you the guest, and hello Optus Bispo too. Thank you for joining. People that go there to see the kangaroo and the other animals, when they see a military standing, guard there at the fence, they're not going to throw stones and rocks. I mean, there's a solution to this. It should have never happened. Okay. Rant is finished. Okay. But now here's a great idea. I don't know how well it's going to work. So, okay, we just kind of ranted on China, but hey, let's give them kudos where it's deserved. Jaywalking. They want to stop jaywalking. So you can see these yellow poles here, right? And these yellow poles will spray water. So if someone, they've got laser sensors, I guess, and if somebody starts to walk, to jaywalk when the light's red and they're not supposed to walk, it'll start spraying them with water. So they know, oh, I have to stay here behind these poles, because if I start to jaywalk, I'm going to get sprayed with water and ruin my suit. And then I've got a business meeting I'm going to, and I'm going to arrive all wet, right? You know, so, hey, this is a good idea. How well is it going to work? I don't know. Hello, thanks for joining No Bim45. Thank you for your hearts. Okay, quickly going over some Cambodia in the news. Rant for a minute. I thought you're the Ron Waxman of Cambodia. What can I have coming out of my head? Coffee cup coming out of my head. Tribute to Ron Waxman. He's on Periscope. If you guys don't know, he's actually all over social media. You can look Ron Waxman. You can look him up. Okay, so Cambodia in the news. They found a shipwreck off the coast of Koh Kong. They don't know what it is, but they're investigating to figure out what this shipwreck is. More than 3 tons of ivory were reportedly bound for Cambodia in Mozambique and were seized. So good. There was a memorial to Khmer Rouge victims erected in Paris. So that's nice. And men claim that they've seen a tiger in Pursat province. I think like the last official sighting of a tiger in Cambodia was like 2010 or 2006 or something like this. And authorities are actually saying, no, you saw a leopard, you didn't see a tiger. And the guys are like, no, it had stripes. It was a tiger, you know. So was it a tiger or not? We have no proof. And hey, was that Patrick, I think, that just joined? Thank you for your hearts as well. And then in Siem Reap, 3 people were killed in a night bus crash and 26 people were injured. I refuse to ever ride a night bus in Cambodia. Lots of tourists do it. They run every day. There is not a crash every day, but I would never get on a night bus in Cambodia. I've driven cars myself in Cambodia. I've driven at night when I didn't make it where I needed to go before the sun went down. And it's extremely dangerous. Number one, even completely alert, it is extremely dangerous because you have dogs and cows and people walking, you know, the national roads don't have barriers. So the national road goes right through a village. So grandma could be walking over to see the kids. Dad could have been drinking with his buddies and walking home. You know, people are walking across the street. You have bicycles, motorcycles, and cars and trucks with no lights on that you could, like, if you're going too fast, you could run into. Okay, so this is for alert drivers. Now, the bus drivers, a lot of times if they're only working the one job for one bus company, then they're also working for somebody else too. So they're tired, they're sleepy, and they're not alert. Yeah, I would never ride a night bus. And there's proof right there. Doesn't happen every day, but I don't want to be on the one that it happens. Okay, and the last Cambodia story, conservationists urge the government to halt the destruction of Phnom Thanaut Sanctuary, which is up in Preah province. So apparently it's a new sanctuary that was just declared a sanctuary, but there's still a lot of illegal logging and everything going on. And so the conservationists are urging the government to do something to stop it. Okay, here we come with our actual deconstructed story. And we're going to go into Syria. And the purpose here is to help you think critically. I don't want to give too many conclusions. Hello, No Gorse One. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I want to show you how you can research to find information and inspire you to do more research so that you're building critical thinking skills. So we're going to look at the chemical weapons attack, because we could talk a lot about Syria, but we're going to kind of focus on the chemical weapons attacks. So I've put together a timeline review. So first off, where did it begin? All the way back in 2012, and December 23rd was the first allegation of a chemical weapons attack. All right, and 7 people were, it says here, allegedly killed in Homs. So I don't know if there was proof on how many people. March 19th, 2013. So jumping forward 3 months, another attack was reported, well, 2 attacks in the 2 main cities of Khan al-Assal neighborhood of Aleppo and the Damascus suburb of al-Atbeh. Forgive my Syrian. About 25 people were reportedly killed and a dozen more injured. All right. A month later, in April 2013, a helicopter was spotted dropping canisters, which were allegedly containing the chemical weapons, onto the town of Saraqueb. 8 people claimed the symptoms such as nausea, breathing problems, and one of them later died. All right, so then in August 21st, was that about 5-6 months later, the Syrian opposition activists claimed that a large-scale chemical weapons attack occurred in the suburbs of Ghouta. All right, and so here is like kind of a map of showing Damascus in Syria and these areas that were affected by the August 21st attack back in 2013. Okay, so a couple of weeks later, September 9th, this is when Russia got involved, okay? And so we've known, if you've been watching recently, Russia's been very involved in helping the current government fight the rebels and ISIS, okay? And this is when they first got involved, September 9th. September 12th, just a few days later, the Assad regime sent a letter to the United Nations Secretary General, which said that they had signed a legislative decree providing the accession of Syria into the Chemical Weapons Convention, because previously he wasn't in that. And when you're in the convention, then you have to abide by the rules, right? So he said, okay, I'll join the convention, signed it into the legislation. And then 4 days later, the UN Secretary General, who was at the time Ban Ki-moon, he delivered a report on the UN investigation into the cause of the chemical weapons in Syria, but they did not say that Syria did it. Now, some people, in fairness, say that the reason they didn't say they did it is because it was outside of their scope of the investigation. They were only supposed to investigate whether or not an attack occurred and not who did it. I don't know if I buy that, but it's possible. Okay. December 12th, a couple months later, the UN team investigating the incidents of the chemical weapons use in Syria issued its final report to the UN, and the report found that the chemical weapons were likely used in 5 of the 7 attacks investigated. GTG, Miriam, have a great weekend. Oh, gotta go. Okay. Thanks for joining, even just a little bit. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so here's part of the critical thinking, right? It was used in 5 of the 7 attacks. Did you just like, what also does that mean if you kind of turn around? That means 2 of the attacks had no chemical weapons. So right there, we have not 100% of attacks that are reported are real. Okay, 5 of them were, 5 of them, not saying who did it, but 5 of them did have chemical weapons used. 2 of them didn't. So not everything reported. 7 were reported, but 2 of them weren't real. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out what's going on. All right. So here is a map because we're going to move into, remember I just said that Syria signed their legislation to join the Chemical Weapons Convention. Well, that means that he is now going to get rid of his chemical weapons that he does have. And these are the countries, if you look here, these are the countries that assisted in taking care of the chemical weapons. There's a process that you have to use to do it, and, you know, they did that. Okay, but we're going to talk about this in the timeline. Removing the stockpile. So January 7th, 2014, Syria delivered their first load of chemical weapons to its port city, Latakia. All right, and there's many more. Lava Good 6. Thank you for joining. So they many more loads of chemical weapons, but the first load was January 7th, 2014. Now, a couple months later, March, the Executive Council concluded its 75th session and noted in its report the increasing pace of removal of Syria's chemical stockpile and requested Syria to continue, quote, the systematic, predictable, and substantial movements to complete its shipments. Okay? So Syria is complying with removing their chemical weapons. April 11th, 2014. Now we've got, okay, wait. So they're complying. If they're complying, there's no reason to go after them, right? So April 11th, less than a month later, more reports emerge of an attack using chlorine gas bombs in Kafir Zita, a village controlled by opposition forces in northwestern Syria. All right. July 24th, the Executive Council of the OPCW also announced that 7 hangars in Syria that were part of the country's chemical weapons will be destroyed and 5 bunkers will be permanently sealed. So this was back in 2014. They're talking about these hangars, and coming up in the timeline, just this past year, I believe in 2008, was it? It's in the timeline when Trump missiled the hangars, right? The Tomahawk missiles. That might have been 2017. We'll get to it. To September 10th, the OPCW confirmed that chlorine gas is being used in Syria. And while they did not assign blame for the attacks, the U.S. Secretary of State at the time, John Kerry, said that the use of helicopters to drop the chlorine gas strongly points, in quotes, and to the Assad regime as the perpetrator. Okay, I got to call this one. Just because there was the use of helicopters, you're jumping to the Assad regime. All right, so what do I do with my critical thinking skills? I get online, I research, basically who has helicopters in Syria, right? That's what I came up with. Well, the U.S. forces in Syria were training Kurdish fighters, all right? And now that's kind of near Turkey and up in the border, but they're in the country, right? The Russian attack helicopters are attacking ISIS. So, okay, so there's the U.S., there's the Russian helicopters attacking ISIS. So the Russians do have helicopters. And then this one is reported to be the CI Pentagon helicopters transporting Daesh terrorists. Daesh is a European way of saying ISIS. All right. And then this one, move my finger this way, is a tweet with RT, you know, Russia Today, I guess the news source. Said Iraq confirmed helicopters on the ground in Nineveh are in the hands of ISIS. Okay, so a lot of the U.S. tanks and rocket launchers and all military weapons that the U.S. gave to Iraq after Saddam Hussein fell got captured by ISIS. Right? Go research that. So ISIS also has some helicopters. Now, I didn't go any further, but it's very possible that Israel has helicopters that have been going into Syria as well. Okay, so what I'm saying is if we go back here, John Kerry, who was Secretary of State at the time, said that the use of helicopters to drop the chlorine gas strongly points, quote, to the Assad regime as the perpetrator. I'm sorry, critical thinking skills, could Assad have done it? Sure, he's got helicopters, okay? But the A plus B is not equaling C. The 1 plus 2 is not equaling 3. You got to have more than that, all right? Okay, back to the timeline. And we start getting more attacks. November 6, 2015, a press release from the OPCW fact-finding team claimed with the utmost confidence that the Islamic State used sulfur mustard in an attack on August 21st in Morea in northern Syria. Really? So you mean ISIS has the capability of doing chemical weapons? Okay. Now, I don't always trust everything that the OPCW says, but it's quite interesting here that they're admitting that Assad didn't do that one, that it was ISIS. Then on January 4th, 2016, just a couple months later, they announced in another press release that the last of the Syrian chemical weapons materials, 75 cylinders of hydrogen fluoride, had been destroyed. Were they wrong? Was Syria holding some back? I don't know. It's their press release that they're saying that they had all been destroyed. So then things stay calm and move up to August 10th, 2016. And the hospital officials in Aleppo report a chemical weapon attack using chlorine gas. And this one, I think, got everybody upset. So by October 21st, the OPCW UN Joint Investigative Mechanism issued a report finding that the Syrian regime was responsible for the third attack on March 16th. However, I will note that Russia disagrees, and Russia says that they have proof that it wasn't, that none of the chemical weapons attacks were ever by Syria. I don't have copies of that particular proof that they are talking about, but that they disagree. Okay. So the first missile attack, getting up to this, April 4th, 2017, right after, just a couple months after Trump was first in office, chemical weapons were used in an attack that killed dozens of people in Syria's northern Idlib province. Syria continues to deny any involvement. All right. 2 days later, on April 6th, the United States used the Tomahawk cruise missiles to target an airbase. Remember those hangars in Syria. Those hangars that are now supposedly empty, according to the investigations. April 12th, just a few days after that, Russia vetoes the UN Security Council resolution that condemned the April 4th chemical attack. Nikki Haley in the UN, representing the US, man, myself, I don't trust her at all. But she's the spokesperson for the US, and they really, 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 really wanted the UN to have a resolution condemning Syria for the April 4th chemical attack that we just talked about, and Russia vetoed it. And when you have one member veto, then you can't go forward. June 26th, so just a couple months after that, the White House issues a release saying it identified, quote, possible preparations for another chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. Whenever the US says that, oh, I think somebody's planning something, I guarantee you 100% that somebody is planning something. Okay, do your own research. Don't listen to me. I'm sharing, and I'll always tell you when I've dug up and researched facts as opposed to what my opinion is. That's my opinion. Okay, don't follow me. Well, of course, follow me, but don't just follow what I say. You discover for yourself. All right. So 6 months go by, and then January 24th. This year, 2018, ISIS is declared as defeated, even though some small pockets remain. Okay. Well, if ISIS is defeated, then there's no reason for the US to be over there doing anything, right? Well, in February 1st, another chemical weapon attack, and this time in Douma, Damascus, so like a suburb of Damascus. The two earlier attacks were reported on January 13th and January 22nd, but nothing was really, nothing was really noticed about that. But the February 1st, now everyone's paying attention. So on April 7th, then reports of another major chemical weapons attack in Douma, again, killing at least several dozen civilians, right? So within a week, then on April 14th, this past weekend, Saturday, the U.S. launched a missile attack on several locations. And the UN Chemical Also important to note that on this very day, that the UN chemical weapons inspectors arrived in Damascus. So they're on the ground, they're in Damascus, US. Why? Why? Were there chemical weapons stockpiled in these places? Or maybe there was some kind of evidence that needed to be destroyed. Just throwing it out there for you to make up your own mind. So, some things that I want to bring to your attention that you can research. This is wrapping it up. We're almost done. Who are the white hats? Look that up for yourself. Who are the white hats? I know the answer, but I want to give you something to do. Hey, Ogor and Tubothel. Okay, so look into that. Who are the white hats in Syria? And then also, because wait, skipped over that one. Is Bashar al-Assad a monster? He's being called a monster. Even President Trump tweeted, he's a monster. Is he a monster? Here's a picture of him when he was an eye doctor. Let me tell you, anytime you've got a leader of a country, whether president or king or whatever, right, prime minister, the firstborn is usually the one that's kind of next in line to inherit things, and they get trained to take over. And then the secondborn, they're free to do whatever they want. And so Bashar was not the firstborn. So he became an eye surgeon. He's married, he's got kids, he's got his little life planned, and then his dad dies, but his brother also dies. So guess who's left to take over and, and inherit the government? Of course, you could have some kind of election or something. I'd have to research that. Was there an election and was he elected by the people, or was it just handed to him? I don't know. That's another thing to research. But is he a monster? Come on. Somebody who was an eye surgeon is a monster? It's possible. It's possible. Is it likely? So here are some things I'd like to note and wrap up with about Syria. And I want you to do your own research about this. Number one, Syria has a state-owned central bank with no IMF debt. Okay, in 2000, there were only 8 countries in the world that were the same, that had a state-owned central bank. Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, Iran, and Syria. Now, the opposition rebels are trying to have their own say we're the real government, and they've actually kind of set up a bank that is tied with the Rothschilds and things, and the international monetary system. So some lists take Syria off if they're recognizing the rebels who have set up a bank. But the official country under Assad is still a state-owned central bank. All right. Number 2, Syria has banned GMO seeds. Now, maybe you like Monsanto. Maybe you love GMO seeds. A lot of people don't. And how interesting that in 2012, the Syrian People's Assembly, they banned GMOs. And the reason that the assembly gave that they did this was to protect the people and the planet. Oh, such a monster. Syria has oil and gas reserves. Number 3, their crude oil reserves have been estimated at 2.5 billion barrels, and their shale oil resources estimated as high as 50 billion tons. All right. Number 4, the last one I'm going to leave you with, is that Syria has dropped the US dollar. Now, this was back in 2006. Syria switched all of the state's foreign currency transactions to euros from dollars. Well, who cares? Who cares? Maybe the US cares. Maybe Monsanto cares. Maybe the IMF cares and the World Bank. So don't take my word for this. Don't just pass along a meme. do your own research and see if what I'm saying, if what I've told you here today is true. Check it out. So finally, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for watching here in our Deconstructed show. Our program, Monday through Friday, we have different topics. We do wacky holidays, celebrity birthdays, this week in history. We also have a little bit of quantum research and just a little bit more esoteric and the spiritual connections and science, what's going on with that and the latest research. And then, we have different things every day that we do. And then Saturday is our weekly Deconstructed show. So please, if you've enjoyed this, if you think it's of value to help people have critical thinking skills, then like, follow, subscribe all across social media. It's the same name, The Maven 2017, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Periscope, and Gab. And if you really, really, really want to support what I'm doing, then please go to Patreon and become a sponsor. That would be awesome. And thank you, Hogs Away, for joining and for your pink hearts. So that's the show for today, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to listen to what I've had to say. I appreciate that so much. And I need to go to, there we go. There's YouTube. And so I'm going to end the stream now. Thank you so much.